Hey friends, I'm Maddie. Welcome to my channel where we talk about all things coding memes, vlogs, and insights. I'm a senior software engineer. Today we have a really special guest, Maitri.
Hi, I'm Maitri. I'm a software engineer at Google and I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Yes.
Cool. So I know my audience is probably super curious about what you do at Google. Can you give like an elevator pitch about what team you're on and what you've been working on?
Of course, I'm actually on Google TV. Again, I'm a software engineer. I'm on the embedded systems and operating side of things. So I really get to work with the performance and go really in depth of how the code and how everything is optimized at Google.
Wow, that's really cool. What languages do you usually use in your day-to-day?
Usually Java and Kotlin. A lot of Android is now built on Kotlin actually, instead of Java. But you know, throughout my career, I've used all sorts of things. So I used to actually work in full stack before at Bloomberg. I used to do TypeScript, Python, C++, and then I moved down. I worked at Google Cloud on the PubSub team using C++, and now I'm doing Java and Kotlin. So
That's awesome.
Use multiple languages.
Well, yeah, at Airbnb, I mostly use Java and C++ nowadays, but we definitely worked with sister teams and like they try really hard to convince us to use Kotlin, so it must be a great language.
Kotlin is good, yeah.
Yeah, go Kotlin. So you work at Google now and you previously worked at Bloomberg. How did you get started in your software engineering journey? How did you know you wanted to be a coder for your job?
Oh gosh, so this actually starts back in high school when I was trying to decide my college, right? So as an Indian, I have two choices of either being a doctor or an engineer. And you know, like I decided to be an engineer instead of a doctor, and that's what I went to school for. And since like I'd actually taken coding classes in high school, so I did C++ and Java in high school, so I already had that knowledge going into college. And then, you know, I went to Binghamton University, and then I just got my Bloomberg job and I was very happy. It was in New York City. I loved my team at Bloomberg and eventually made my way to Google.
Wow, that's so cool. New York City sounds like the dream for sure.
It definitely is.
Do you think that any of the skills or any of the projects you worked on at Bloomberg help you land your job at Google?
100%. I think the one main thing that you need to do when you're just starting off your career is like not ask for work-life balance. Like honestly, I feel like people have gotten into this mess of asking for work-life balance. But when you're young and you're energetic, that's the time where you want to make the most speed in your career, right? So I really made sure that I got put on projects where I was like, you know, leading the project. Even when I'm like 2 years into the company, I was like leading like some small part of a feature, some small part of like a microservice, whatever. And that's what really helped me land a job at Google because I could talk about this project in depth.
Wow, I think that shows so much initiative. Did you ever get pushback or anything if, you know, you wanted to work on a feature and your manager's like, oh, you might not have enough experience? How did you deal with that?
I don't think I had any pushback because I think Bloomberg is a very like collaborating and like career-driven culture. At least my team was very, very good in that sense. So my manager, any idea that you like brought up, they very much supported it. They might help you prioritize things because obviously when you're working at big companies, you need to deliver your OKRs or like the projects that you have been assigned. So anything you build on top of that, like that's on your own time. But again, when you're starting off, like you shouldn't be asking to be chill. You should be asking to take initiative and do more work than you are assigned.
That's so true. I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily take that initiative. And I think, yeah, that definitely speaks to kind of the career growth and trajectory.
Yeah, and that's what I think especially when you're working in like a FANG or main company, like you need that initiative, you need that push. Because all the people in like big tech companies, like they're very, very good at engineering and they all take the initiative.
Yeah, so I was just curious again, because you were a different company and then you went to Google, how did you prepare for the Google coding interview? What do you think helped you stand out in the process?
Actually, a funny story, like whenever I was in college, like I never really prepared for interviews, like, cause such a flex. It's not. The reason I did not prepare was because I was taking my data structures and algorithms class around the same time that I was giving my interviews. So like that class just sort of helped me, you know, give the rounds. And then the reason it's not a flex is because when I first gave the Google interview, I actually failed. So I didn't get in the first time. And that's when I'm like, like I need to go and learn Leetcode. Not learn, but like do Leetcode. So when I was preparing seriously for the Google interview, like I think I did like 2 or 3 months of Leetcode, like solid Leetcode. Every day I would sit down, do at least 4 to 5 problems before I go to sleep, even if it's 1 a.m. I'm doing 4 to 5 questions, right, on Leetcode. And then the other thing I did was do interviews with other companies at the same caliber, like Amazon, Microsoft. And it's not just for practice, but it's also like, you don't know what team you're gonna get at Google, right? Like Google is a great name, but like you want to also work on projects that you also like. So having those options available, I always say like you want to do interviews at other companies so that you have the option available as well as you get your interview practice in.
Yeah, that's so true. Like I definitely get it. Like when I was interviewing, because I recently I recently switched teams and companies. I definitely took a lot of interviews that I didn't necessarily think I need just to get that practice. I was lucky in that, I guess for my role, I did know exactly what team I was joining, but I know for other companies, you get put in this like team matching process, so you don't really know which team you're joining until like the very, very end.
Yeah, exactly.
And definitely good to have those options open. Also competing offers.
Yeah, yeah, negotiating, because all these companies right now are definitely gonna try to lowball you, so you need to have good offers in order to negotiate better.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're so experienced with interview prep and interview training, what do you think is like the biggest mistake candidates make during the coding interviews that you know about?
One of the biggest things, I think this is for big tech in general, is that people think they need to code right away, because the thing is you need to answer 2 to 3 questions in a given interview. So people dive straight into the questions and try to code like the entire solution, in my opinion, because I was also an interviewer at Bloomberg. When I saw people do that, I'm like, do you already have the answers like memorized? Like how are you not speaking about it, right? So I think what you want to do is take a step back, make sure you understand the problem, talk about it, literally pseudocode it. You don't have to type it out, but at least talk about it so I know your thought process, and then you code it. I think communication is one big thing candidates miss. If I can't understand your code, if I don't know how your thought process is, like you're not going to be a great addition to my team, right? So I think that's the biggest factor.
I totally feel that. I feel like even if a candidate is like the best coder, if they can't communicate not just with their teammates, but also with like stakeholders and PM and non-technical persons, they're not going to be that good of an addition to the team.
Exactly.
And like you said, like if the candidate knows it immediately. While I was at Google, I gave many, many interviews, and you know, with the advent of AI and everything, I definitely could feel sometimes I would ask a question and the candidate would know it immediately, which is, to be honest, that's not the biggest red flag. However, if I wanted them to like go deeper or explain why they wrote the code they could and they couldn't answer, that's when I'm like, oh, okay,
it's
like,
a red flag. Red
flag. You don't actually know. You're not actually writing the code. It's like definitely using like, I don't know the technologies, but definitely using AI to cheat.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely communication is so important to show 100%. The interviewer that you actually can understand and write code.
Yeah, and again, it's just about, because when you're working on a team, like it's not just about coding, right? It's about discussing like 10 different ways you can come up with one solution, and see which one is the most efficient and most optimized version, right? So you need to be able to think through that process.
Yeah, and I think what sets like senior engineers apart from junior engineers is not just getting a solution, it's kind of understanding the drawbacks and the pros and cons of different solutions and be able to present that in like a digestible format to stakeholders to decide like what they should go with. And you said that you did take 2 to 3 months to prepare for interviews, which I think is so smart. However, I know some people might not have the luxury, just months of preparation. If a candidate only had 30 days of prep, how would you recommend they get started?
When you only have 30 days of prep, I'm assuming that you have the basic DSA figured out. So I think what you should do is actually buy Leetcode Premium. If the company you're interviewing for has Leetcode as their interview rounds, definitely get Leetcode Premium and kind of do the most frequently asked questions. And I'm not saying those are the exact questions you're gonna get, but you'll understand the type of patterns these companies ask, right? Like I think for certain companies, they really love asking like graph problems. So like when you do a lot of BFS, DFS, like you'll just know that pattern so well that you're able to answer those questions, even if you get a different question in the interview.
Yeah, that's so true. I think something I wasn't very good at when I was doing new grad interviews was I was just trying to like answer as many questions on Leetcode as I could without thinking about the different like like you said, underlying patterns.
Yeah.
And I think this time around when I was interviewing for senior software engineering positions, it really helped kind of internalizing like, oh, these are the general categories of questions I need for this particular company, and these are the questions I should do. And we also did touch upon, you know, like AI for interviews for a while, but let's talk about AI and the actual software engineering job. Do you think AI will replace software engineers? Why not?
I don't think AI is going to replace software engineers, purely. I think software engineers are here to stay. That being said, the role of software engineers, I think, is going to change a lot. If you've used any AI tool, like, you know, AI codes very, very well now. I'm not saying 100%, but it codes very well. So all your Leetcode problems, all your basic functions, testings, like, these are all, I think, can be written by AI. I don't think it's going to change, but like the way you think, it's going to become more of a senior engineer role where you have to design, you have to architecture your code, make sure things are actually optimized. And I think for that reason, you need to know your coding fundamentals. You need to know your basic fundamentals of computer science. Otherwise, like, you're not going to understand the code that AI writes, and then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I totally get that. I feel like I've also reviewed PRs where it's like kind of obvious that the person just put it through like ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever you want, and like spit it out. And there's like, you know, like boilerplate there.
Yeah.
But I totally get it. Like, AI tools definitely makes it a lot easier for people to write code fast.
Yeah.
But you just gotta really understand.
You have to understand it, exactly.
Besides understanding the code that you write through AI, what are some other ways that software engineers can kind of future-proof their careers to make sure they're always ahead of the curve when it comes to the advent of AI?
Yeah, I think number one thing is like just being up to date with all the AI tools that are already out there. There's a ton of tools, but to be very honest, there's only a select handful of like LLM models. So you need to at least know what those LLM models are and like be able to use them, understand how an LLM actually works. Because I think the types of AI, like right now it's Gen AI, right? But like maybe 10 years down the line, it's a different type of AI that exists. But like using these tools is never going to not be there. You need to be ahead of the curve by using newer tools, incorporating that into your daily life. And I think that's the only way they can kind of stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's so true. I think like software engineering, more so than a lot of other careers, it's about always like learning, and if you
100%.
Always like trying to learn new technologies, learn new AIs and things like that. I'm just curious, what kind of AI tools do you use in your own daily coding life?
Okay, well, being at Google, obviously Gemini. I think Gemini's like recent models like DeepMind and just Gemini 2.0 Pro, these are really, really great models. I use them internally, I use them externally. In terms of coding though, I really, really, really like Claude. I think that is one of my most like favorite tool, like Claude Sonnet 3.5. Amazing. And then specifically Claude projects, if you guys haven't tried that out, you can actually feed in like a specific code, or since I'm also a content creator, like I can feed in my transcripts and it'll generate the same exact like style, if not better for me, with the Claude projects.
Yeah, that's super cool insights. And as someone who has gotten offers from many different FANGs and from Bloomberg and all these cool companies, what advice do you have for job seekers in, you know, today's economy and today's market, which is rather tough?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to build projects, to be honest, like side projects. I don't think Leetcode itself is cutting it. Like, you need Leetcode to interview well, but in order to even get the interview in the first place, you need to build out projects using AI as well, right? And you need to build in public. So in my opinion, what that means is like, you need to showcase it and then like literally scream it out into the world, get users on your platform. When you see those artifacts, like recruiters and like other people out in the public are just come to you and make your project more aware to the public, that just helps you beat the crowd, because there's a lot of people applying now and you need to stand out. And I think number one way to stand out is just building projects out in public.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I definitely have to do better, because I feel like since joining industry, I used to do a lot of side projects, and since joining industry, I just haven't done anything, and you know, really gotta get back on that grind. Because obviously I'm not looking for a job right now, but I think you can never be too over prepared, right? Just in case something happens.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting a job. I think it also helps you, again, stay on top of the newer technologies that exist. It's just, you need to keep learning and building out hands-on projects, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like in terms of the actual like coding interviews and stuff, what do you think are like the top 2 or 3 skills that someone who is trying to interview should develop while prepping?
I think number one thing is like knowing your fundamentals and kind of deciphering the language that's used, right? So if you like, there's certain ways that the questions are phrased where you just know that you have to use depth for search, or if you have to use breadth for search, or if it's a DP problem, right? Like those, when you just see something hard, just assume it's DP, in my opinion.
So true.
But for DFS, BFS, like there's a certain way the phrasing of the question is. So you need to be able to like know that on top of your mind. So that's number one thing. And then the second thing is time efficiency. So I think what the problem that most people get into is that they focus on a Leetcode problem and then they keep at it, even if they can't understand the problem or if they can't solve it because of some tiny mistake. They're at that question for like 1 or 2 hours, right? Until they get it right. Initially, maybe fine, but I think when you're like in the preps of it and like your interview is coming up, you don't have that time luxury, right? So you want to only spend, I would say, 20 to 25 minutes for a medium level problem, maybe 30 minutes max, like max for a hard problem when you're prepping. Anything more than that, just go back and look at the answer, mark that question, and then a few weeks later, just go back to that problem and try to solve it again. Don't spend hours on one particular Leetcode problem because you're not like highly likely you're not going to get that problem in the interview.
Yeah, I think definitely like pattern recognition over like individual problems is the way to go here. Thank you so much for that advice about interview prep. And now that you've been at Bloomberg and you've been at Google for years, what do you think is the best piece of advice someone has given you career-wise?
I have 2 actually. Number 1 is find a mentor in the industry. I think I got this advice actually when I was in college. My mentor helped me like get my job at Bloomberg. I'm not gonna lie. It's like amazing mentor. He guided me in getting the correct research projects, getting jobs at like not actually jobs, but like basically guiding me through different industries and how to like when you're in the job itself, like what you need to do. So I think he's like my go-to source whenever I have any questions about the industry. So definitely find a mentor very early on. And then the second thing is writing down everything that you do week by week, honestly, like meticulously write it down. What happens is my manager at Bloomberg was really good. So like she kind of handled like whatever I was doing, and that like kind of blindsided me when I came to Google, because at Google, you're kind of expected to like vouch for yourself. And if you don't know, if you haven't written down exactly what you've done, come at the end of the quarter, you're not gonna know like what the nitty-gritty of each project was. Like maybe you completed a project, but like maybe it was more complicated than what you've described. And when you write snippets down, basically, like how complicated like a given project was, and then you can vouch for yourself. So I would say every week, take 15 minutes of your time and write stuff down.
That is so true. I definitely relate. When I started Google, the first, I think like 6 months, I didn't really know what performance reviews were, what you needed. So I was just kind of, completing my projects on time or early. But then when it came to performance review season, I realized like I couldn't actually think of what I did. So I had to like go back and look at all of my PRs and all of my docs, and it was quite painful. So after that cycle, every week I like write kind of like what I did, what impact it had, like any like relevant artifacts, like docs, like attached PRs. And that really, I think, helped me progress through Google as the years went on, and cannot stress that enough. And just going back to what you said, you mentioned that you found a mentor at university who helped you get your Bloomberg job. How did you find that mentor? Was it like a program, or did you reach out to specific people?
Yeah, so I actually had connections. Like I had pretty good connections with my professors, and my dream company in my college time was Bloomberg. So I just reached out to my professors. I'm like, hey, like I want to go to Bloomberg. Like, do you have any referrals that you can provide to me, basically? And my professor is the one who knew this mentor person. And I reached out to him, and I like the way that I went about it was not ask him. I think you don't want to sound desperate when you're looking for a mentor. Don't just straightforwardly ask this person for a referral at their specific company. To be very honest, I never asked him for a referral into Bloomberg.
Wow.
I never did. What I did was like, I'm like, what skills do I need in order to get into Bloomberg? Every weekend, I would have a call on Sunday and be like, he would basically give me a new Leetcode problem. I would try to solve it. And this is me as a freshman and sophomore in college. He would give me a Leetcode problem, and then the next Sunday, like we would discuss how I went about solving this problem. So this kind of built a long-term connection. And then come time to apply for Bloomberg, I just applied, and he called me. He's like, hey, like, did you apply? Because the internship opened. Like, let me know if you like want me to give you a referral. I'm like, oh, sorry, I already applied. And he's like, what are you doing? Why don't you use the connections that you have, right? So I think the long-term mentorship really goes a long way. Even when I got to Bloomberg, even when I was switching into Google and deciding between, the different offers that I had, I called him up again. I'm like, what do I do? He's like a soundboard that's already been in the industry for some time. It's just very, very good to have. So
yeah, I totally feel that. I was also pretty lucky to have multiple mentors when I was in university, and like your mentor sounds like, my mentors were awesome, but your mentor also sounds like amazing, gave you all the technical prep and things like that. I should look for that as well. I feel like I don't do Leetcode unless I'm like forced.
You're forced to, yeah.
No, like definitely stay on top of your Leetcoding skills, even if you're not actively looking for a job.
100%. You just never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, when you were in college, you said that your dream job was Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Why Bloomberg? Like, what about it really attracted you?
So all my internships have been in the fintech world, actually. So I worked at Citibank before. Basically what had happened was I found this mentor, and like at this time I was like okay-ish about Bloomberg, okay? Then he brought me into the Bloomberg office when I was in New York City. I saw the Bloomberg office.
That's nice.
And it's really nice, but the words he said to me is what stuck to me, okay? He walked me around like the entire floor. He walked me, like it was on the 29th floor. I still remember this day. And the words he said was, this is where you're meant to be, that like this is what you're working for. And I don't know why, but those words just stuck to me, and I'm like, man, like this is where I have to be, like no questions asked. Like to be honest, I never even applied for Google or like any big other company. I really just wanted Bloomberg after that day, and that's what I worked for.
Oh, that's so awesome. The dream came true, and then it's like you got the offer and you worked there.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, and I guess you left Bloomberg after like a couple of years. Right?
Yeah,
and then went to Google.
Years, yeah.
Like when did you know it was time to look externally, and why did you settle on Google?
Yeah, so like again, like I really loved my time at Bloomberg, but when you're first in the industry, like I think the number one mistake I didn't want to make was just stay at a company for so long. No, nothing wrong in that. Like you can learn a lot about a specific tech and go in depth with it. I guess is a depth first search or a breadth first search problem.
Right? Everything is algorithms. We're all algorithms.
Basically, honestly. So you can go really in depth with like a certain technology. For me, I worked in full stack at Bloomberg, and then I was like, I need to learn distributed systems. I need to learn the infrastructure and how it worked. And that's why I chose Google, to be honest. Like this particular team, I worked in PubSub, and I had really wanted to learn that level of stuff. And then, after that team, I was like, I want to learn operating systems and learn about how to optimize things. So I came on Google TV team. So I've just basically been working my way down the stack. And that's, I guess, kind of why I switched from Bloomberg to Google.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely relate. Why I left Google wasn't because, like, again, I love Google. It wasn't because anything wrong with Google, but just like I felt like I was a bit stagnant, and I'd been at Google for a bit under 4.5 years. So it just kind of felt right to try something new. And I was full stack at Google. I'm at Airbnb. I'm now more back-end focused, but still full stack, but just my team is an infra team. So hopefully, we both can get like the skills that we want to get from moving to new companies and new teams.
I agree. And I think that also helps you decide what you want to do, right? Like when you've basically worked your way down the stack, maybe you're taking a little longer than other peers to like grow up the ladder. But like when you're like looking and you've learned the entire stack, like you also get to decide what you're better at. And that decision, I think for the long term goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like less about like, making the most money or the most like the best company now, and more about like long-term growth and where you want to be in like 5, 10 years, etc.
Agreed.
And finally, what is your one most important piece of advice for software engineers?
Yeah, I think, again, being in this AI era right now, like things are moving like crazy, right? And I think you just need to be on top of it. You need to keep learning and wanting to keep learning, because that skill itself is never going away in tech. So definitely you want to keep learning. And then just have fun. Just like these technologies, there's so much you can create now with these AI tools. Like just keep wanting to learn and wanting to build. That's why you chose engineering in the first place.
Yeah. Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for chatting with us. Your insights and your advice has been absolutely amazing.
Of course. I can't wait to have you on my channel as well.
If you enjoyed this, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.